All right. So, welcome to the Monday night movie talk with your host, the MovieDude Eric. I'm MovieDude Eric. Welcome to the first episode. I'm genuinely excited to talk about this. Right now, if you don't mind, I'm just wanting to make sure that everything is all nice and set up. So, if uh, if you notice that I'm looking down at stuff, it's just because I want to make sure that all the streams are working. I'm hoping also to uh, get to just make sure that um, so looks like we're good there. I think we're set. All right, so let's talk some movies on a Monday night. Kind of give you an idea of what it is that we're going to be doing here on this show, and kind of the general idea of what to look forward to each Monday night when we have our little discussion. So, first off, what I will do right off the bat is I will do a weekly rundown of the things that I've seen over the last week or so to kind of give you a small, not so much review or just kind of a first impressions, I guess you could say, over the materials that I've seen. Some of it will be films, some of it might be TV shows or video games or books that I've read, something that has an impact on me, and that I think that you might want to know an opinion or so about. Once I've done the weekly rundown, we will be going into our main topic, which, if you notice the subject of this particular video, is going to be talking about the problems of the MCU Spider-Verse. I know that people are loving on Spider-Man's No Way Home, and while I do enjoy the film, there are some things that I do find fascinating and I think need to be addressed with the MCU Spider-Verse. And I know that there are some people that really want to know um, what some of those issues are. So I'm very excited to get into that. Also, I will be going over the trends that I've seen over 2021 and kind of the things that some of the things that I'm wondering if we're going to be seeing more of as we go into 2022 and beyond. Some things that I'm very eager to kind of get out there and to kind of discuss. Also, some of the movies that are coming out in 2022 that I'm very excited about, albeit right now because it is early in the year. You know, some of these are the bigger budget films. Uh, when it comes to like the smaller independent films, usually about midway through the year is when we'll start to get to know when those movies are going to be coming out. I'll also be keeping an eye on the film festivals. If there's anything of interest that looks like it's coming out, I will be keeping track on it, and hopefully I'll get a chance to talk about those with you as well. So, let's get started with the weekly rundown. So, for our first thing that I want to talk about regarding the rundown is a Netflix movie that I saw just at the end of the year when it posted onto Netflix. Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Lost Daughter. I've heard about this film during through the film festivals. I was curious to see where this was going, especially with Olivia Colman and with Jessie Buckley, who are two actresses that I have been watching for a while, and that I get excited when I know that either one of these two actresses are in movies coming out. Especially Jessie Buckley, who, especially after Wild Rose and my number one film of last year, which was I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which I thought she did a really good job and that she deserved nominations for those two particular films. The Lost Daughter, when it comes to the acting, is just on point. Olivia Colman is incredible, playing a professor who is on vacation holiday, and a series of events have taken place that made her reevaluate, or maybe not reevaluate, but relive some traumatizing events in her life, especially when it comes to motherhood. Jessie Buckley plays her younger self, and and I love how you see the characters in each other. That you can see the younger woman in Olivia Colman, and Jessie Buckley captures the essence of Olivia Colman's performance as well. And so there's this kind of wonderful dance between the two of them, between their two particular scenes. Dakota Johnson also really stood out in this particular film. My only real complaints when it comes to the film is that the messaging seems to be a little muddled. I'm wondering if it's one of those films that I might need to see a couple more times to really appreciate what the film is going for. So I'm really, I think it is a good film, and I hope that you get a chance, if you have Netflix, to check it out. All right, so, the next film I want to talk about is Joel Coen's The Tragedy of Macbeth, which I had the fortune to see yesterday at our Alamo Draft House here in Houston, and I have to say this was just an incredible film. Now I do need to make some caveats there. First off, Macbeth is my all-time favorite Shakespeare play, and up to this particular point, I've seen the Sir Laurence Olivier version of Macbeth, which I really didn't like. I also watched the Roman Polanski version, which, in my opinion, didn't really hit what I was hoping for. So I was kind of curious to see what this version of Macbeth would look like. And Joel Coen just did an incredible job of directing this with a minimalist style, using very plain and empty spaces, not using a whole lot of set dressing, using a black and white film style that really brought in the starkness of the story, and really relying on his actors, specifically Denzel Washington, who plays the titular Macbeth. Frances McDormand as Lady Macbeth was really good. I mean, we're talking about a Joel Coen film. I know that he doesn't have Ethan in on this one, so sometimes I was wondering if that was going to play a part in whether or not this was going to work. And quite honestly, it was. I had nothing to fear, because the story was done very well. They brought it down to, I want to say, about 90 minutes or an hour 40. And so it really breezed by through that story, and only focused on the things that were really important to the main through line. And so it really allowed the actors to chew that scenery, but at the same time kept the focus directly on the plot. Corey Hawkins is another actor that I really liked in this particular film, especially with Macduff. Just because of the fact that Macduff is in himself not a very interesting character, but at the same time he found a way to make him interesting, and so I really like this film, and I strongly recommend it. If you can see it in theaters, please see it. I know Omicron is a thing, so if you can't, it is going to be on Apple TV, I think January 14th. So give it a shot at that particular point. All right, so on the TV side, I finally joined the rest of society in seeing Squid Game. As someone who enjoys Korean cinema, I definitely saw a lot of the themes that you would normally see, especially in modern Korean cinema, regarding identity and complacency and conformity. Also kind of a wink and a nod to a culture of watching and enjoying violent death. To me, I honestly thought this was I mean, it was an entertaining show. Although there were several times when I felt very uncomfortable watching it, and I know that that was kind of the intention. That said, I am surprised that this took off as it did. It was definitely a film that, um, that kind of teetered between exploitation and just out and out silliness. So maybe that was a big draw, but it was an interesting first season. I know that there's going to be a second, maybe even a third season. I will be watching, uh, but I'm curious to see what they do with it from this particular point. Uh, and then finally, I did also break down and finally saw the first season of Succession, which was a show that people have been recommending to me for a long time now. And quite honestly, this feels just like another, HBO kind of kick in the teeth type of show where you're following a whole bunch of unlikable people doing unlikable things, and obviously it's talking about serious issues, but at the same time, it just wasn't very entertaining to me. It just didn't really capture the. It didn't feel like I was getting any insight into the characters, yet I didn't like anybody, and especially when it comes to HBO shows, that is a problem, because you either have to give me something that I can really dig into concerning the themes, or kind of the messaging, which is all over the place with this season. And maybe second season, third season, it gets a little better. I doubt it. It seems to be like it's just more the same as from what it looks like. Um, I might actually come back to this, but I'm not going to be racing through. I'm not going to be binge watching the rest of the show at this particular point. But that's my weekly rundown of the things that I've seen. If you have differing opinions, please feel free to send me a message. And if I see that a message has been posted, I will read on the air, and maybe we can get a dialogue going. All right, so with the weekly rundown knocked out, it is time to get into the main theme for today's show, which is talking about the problems of the MCU Spiderverse. Now, I need to make this perfectly clear. First off, I do enjoy the MCU films. I've been around since Iron Man. I've been watching Marvel films practically from the moment they started. I remember seeing Blade in the theater at the age of 17, and really enjoying what Blade did, and one of those that was like going out telling people to go see this movie. And I've seen practically every Marvel film since in the theater. Opening weekend, I think there's been a couple of times when I didn't catch it opening weekend, but usually within the first week I've seen it. And Spider-Man, the Sony Spider films, all the way back to Tobey Maguire, have been some of my favorite of the Marvel films, with the exception of Spider-Man 3, which in my opinion is one of the worst superhero films ever made. I, in fact, enjoy Amazing Spider-Man 2 a lot more than a lot of other people, although I will say that there are some serious problems with that. It was at least entertaining in that sense, which I cannot say when it comes to Spider-Man 3. And I've tried watching that film 3 times, hoping that I would get something more out of it, and never did. When the MCU announced that they were going to be bringing in Spider-Man, I was really eager to see what they were going to do with it, especially considering that one of the things I really liked about the Spider-Man films is the fact that Spider-Man is all about responsibility and choices, and how his one of the arcs that made him very interesting, especially in the Raimi films, was the fact that he was not only struggling with being the superhero, but having to juggle that with the responsibilities that came along with just being a human being and a citizen of New York City. And so that was something that I was really hoping that would be seen in the Spider-Man films after Captain America Civil War. And just to put my cards on the table, when Spider-Man Homecoming came out, I really did not like Spider-Man Homecoming. I mean, it wasn't the worst MCU film. It still isn't one of the worst MCU films. That said, though, it was one that I think I liked the least out of this out of the MCU films, primarily because it made several mistakes that we'll be talking about, because this does kind of play into what I'm talking about when it comes to Spider-Man No Way Home. When Spider-Man Far From Home came out a couple of years ago, or I guess it's almost 3 years ago. No, it was a bit too. But when Far From Home came out, I actually liked it. In fact, it made my top 10 list of that particular year, because it felt like it was addressing some of the issues that I saw in Homecoming, and that I was excited to see that they would follow up that with this particular film, with No Way Home, that they were going to follow through with this and explore what I think is the most important themes when it comes to Spider-Man. But the fact that they didn't really, and the fact that they kind of walked back some of those changes that I thought were really good in Far From Home, really left me with a sour taste in my mouth to that extent. Now, I do want to make it very clear, I do enjoy No Way Home as an entertaining film. But that said, I am very frustrated with this particular film for 4 key reasons. And one of the reasons why I'm curious to see what they're going to do with Spider-Man moving forward, whether he's going to be a part of the MCU moving on, or if they're going to pull him out of the MCU and just keep him in the Spider-Verse. But I do want to go ahead and talk about these 4 core things. The first thing that I want to bring up is the fact that I am really irritated with this Spider-Verse, or the MCU Spider-Verse, with the fact that everybody likes Peter Parker. One of the things that really annoys me about the everybody likes Peter Parker situation is that it automatically creates this sense that he's entitled to the things that he's been given in these particular films, especially with Homecoming. He's at an incredible high school. He's one of the most liked people there, with the exception of Flash Thompson, who later on he'll become a secret Peter Parker fan, which I kind of like the fact that when it comes to Flash being I get it, he really didn't hate Peter Parker in the MCU. He just found him annoying or uncool, perhaps, I think is the best way to put it. And so this was something that really annoyed me, and that I thought was very interesting when we got into Far From Home, that Peter Parker became kind of, I don't want to say unlikable to an extent, but he had to deal with issues with the fact that people were starting to get annoyed by him. And I really thought that they were going to kind of dig into that, especially considering the reveal at the end of Far From Home. Now, I do want to go ahead and say right now, for the rest of this particular conversation about the Spider-Verse, I will be spoiling No Way Home. It has been out for a couple of weeks now, so if you're not wanting to hear the spoilers, please make sure that you come back to this episode later. And you can get my opinions on this. But going into No Way Home, I was really excited to see what they were going to do with the fact that they revealed that Peter Parker was in fact Spider-Man. Um, and then when we saw the shrine to Peter Parker slash Spider-Man at his school, I got really annoyed because I knew where they were going with this. The fact that he was still extremely likable, that people were not calling him out for his irresponsible behaviors, and that the fact that he put a lot of people in jeopardy. I was really upset by the fact that, with the exception, I guess, of the Hannibal Buress character, I wish they would have played that up a little bit. Instead of it coming off as kind of anti-Spider-Man vitriol, this kind of Alex Jonesy, J. Jonah Jameson thing, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. But when it comes to, Peter Parker as a person, no one seems to really take into account that they kind of give him this sense of entitlement to the way that they treat him. And so this is really annoying to me in the MCU Spider-Verse, and that I think really hurts the credibility of him being an every person in that sense. The fact that he has this undulating love from everyone, that he seems to do no wrong in their eyes, and that's very frustrating. Let's talk about the fact that the biggest problem that came from Homecoming, that really came out in No Way Home, is the fact that no one holds Spider-Man accountable for anything. This was something that we saw specifically in Homecoming. They were trying to play it off as this. How do I put this? Him kind of learning the great the great power comes great responsibility. Although the worst thing, the worst he's ever had to deal with it was the fact that he got his super suit taken away from him by Tony Stark. Which at this particular point, we'll be talking about Tony in just a moment, because that's going to play into something that really that I think doesn't really get enough attention. But the fact that Peter Parker and Spider-Man specifically, they will damage things like the barge when it comes to Homecoming. The fact that he endangers other people's lives, is kind of reckless in that particular sense. Now, when we talk about other Spider-Mans, such as with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man or Andrew Garfield's, yeah, there is a bit of recklessness in there, but at the same time, New York does not seem to, they don't adore those Spider-Man. The fact that Spider-Man has to kind of reconcile what he's doing to their, and that he has to kind of earn that trust from them, that I think was what really sold me on those particular Spider-Man stories. And in fact, if you want to see it, Spider-Man 3, a lot of the problems with that was the fact that he was so adored, and that he didn't, it kind of damaged his character a little bit in that sense. But at the same time, they also used that to twist it when it came to when he became the Black Suit Spider. And so the fact that there's no turn on this, that there's no real payoff to the fact that he can cause so much damage, and especially after London, and especially having his name tarnished at the end of Far From Home, I was really excited to see if they were actually going to hold him accountable, if there was going to actually be a payoff to the fact that he was responsible. The fact that he had not only the great powers that he had with the spider suit and his spider senses, but also the fact that he had the trust of Tony Stark and Tony Stark's technology, and the fact that he allowed that technology to get into the wrong hands. He didn't hold himself accountable. He didn't hold. No one held him accountable. And on top of that, and we'll get a little bit more into that in just a moment. But the fact that even near when we get towards the end, when he makes the great sacrifice of finally allowing accepting the fact that everyone will have to forget him, in a way, it also takes away that accountability there, because what he basically is doing is, again, just leaving it so that no one knows who this person is. He is not going to be held accountable for all the damage that he did up to that particular point, and that damage is not going to go away, which is very frustrating in that particular sense. No one's going to be thinking of him as a great guy, Spider-Man, but I think it would have been better for the story if, in fact, they had found a way for him to have to to accept responsibility for the damage that he's done, and to have to earn back his reputation and to earn back that trust from New York. I think that would have been a great way of building that, but that wasn't the direction that they went, and I feel like that's something that needs to be addressed. And another thing that I really found very frustrating about the MCU Spider-Verse is, again, going back to the fact that he is an Avenger, and that his mere existence in the Avengers damages their credibility. The fact that they allow this teenager, this kid, who cannot be held responsible for his actions, basically to go rolling around with these superheroes, and that they seem to be perfectly okay with that. Specifically, when it comes to Tony Stark and when we get to No Way Home, Doctor Strange, that they don't take into account that by encouraging him and giving him the things that they do, that there's not going to be ramifications to that. And again, what I liked about Far From Home was that, in fact, the fact that that Mysterio did in fact call out the fact that Tony Stark gave a teenager superior weaponry, that this godlike power within the technology that he gave Spider-Man, is something that should be concerning. And I was really excited to see if they were actually going to follow through with that. And while they make the inferences, when they infer that the Stark technology, that there's going to be accountability held towards Stark Industries when it comes to Spider-Man, that Peter does not face any of those repercussions. Aunt May has more repercussions put on her than Peter does, and at the same time they kind of let her go too. It's really weird how no one seems to hold anyone accountable regarding allowing Spider-Man to exist around these very dangerous things, with ramifications towards everyone, not just the Avengers, but everyone. Is kind of, their fate is thrust upon the hands of someone who is shown over and over again that he is not ready for that kind of responsibility. And that damages the credibility of the Avengers, considering that they were all, that the leading members of the Avengers all seem to be accepting the fact that he's a part of them, and that they don't take into account just how dangerous that really is, not just for him, but for everyone. And that finally brings me to the thing that really irritates me about these MCU Spider-Verse is the fact that they made J. Jonah Jameson have a point. Before it was kind of within the realms of the Marvel comics, all the way up through the animated shows, all the way up through the Raimi shows, and the Mark Webb films. Jameson wasn't really a part of the Webb films, but the fact that Jameson went after Spider-Man with such zeal, overzealous, almost came off as attention-seeking, and I do like the fact that Jameson has that ability of getting under Spider-Man's suit and kind of really being able to dig into his irritation, while at the same time he actually does play kind of an opposition that needs to be placed on Spider-Man. The fact that he was capable of addressing the issues and concerns about Spider-Man really does play into that kind of other foe that Spider-Man has to deal with. But at the same time, though, Jameson's vitriol really didn't land because, the thing is that Parker understood that he was alone in this fight. And taking that away from him, making him such a beloved character, allowing him to have a team that had his back, allows Jameson's complaints and his criticism of Spider-Man even more prevalent, because not only is he acting on his own, but he has people that are allowing him to take charge and to lead things, and that is extremely dangerous, especially for such a young hero. And so I think that this for me, it's irritating, because Jameson should not have that kind of credibility. His opposition should always be kind of on the side of pessimistic, and so giving him these points just really frustrates me. Maybe it's just the fan in me that really that's annoyed by this, but especially with No Way Home, the actual things that he went after Spider-Man for, he's right. He's right to have that point. And the fact that with No Way Home, they turned him into this Alex Jones, crackpot, really annoys me, because this could have been an opportunity for them to address those issues that Spider-Man has. And to me, especially going into some of the other Marvel films that I also think are going to have to deal with some serious issues, considering the real-world ramifications that come across. And I'm specifically talking about Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, because that one's got to pull off a trick that I don't think that they're wanting to do. And if they ignore it, I'm going to have serious problems with that particular film. But I'll talk more about that one when the time comes. But yeah, Jameson should not have a point, and it is really annoying that he does. So, those are my main problems and concerns when it comes to the MCU Spider-Verse. This is something that could be addressed in future installments. The problem that I'm having with that is the fact that this is a trilogy where if you were to look at the other trilogies of the MCU, whether it comes to Iron Man, Captain America specifically, are the two that come to mind right off the bat. Thor honestly was never designed as a trilogy, but I have a strange feeling that they might be looking at creating an arc for Thor specifically, moving into the next film, and maybe even the film after that, especially considering that Love and Thunder, I feel, is a transition to a new series. But with Iron Man, they completed his arc. Although Iron Man 3 was, in my opinion, still the worst of the of the MCU films. Yes, even worse than Eternals. Um, but also with Captain America, both of those trilogies complete arcs, and that they have a solid beginning, and they find a way to end that particular individual arc on a note that gives it finality. Um, and so it could be that perhaps they might be able to make another film that ties this up, that addresses the issues that I have, and if they do, I will be more than happy to recant what I'm saying right now. If this was part of some sort of larger plan, I just don't see that happening, and that's very frustrating for me. So if you think that I'm right, feel free to uh, to share your agreement. If you think that I'm wrong, I'm more than happy to have an honest conversation about this, and to look deeper into this particular subject. But either way, feel free to leave comments and tell me what you honestly think about this. All right, so that out of the way, let's go ahead and let's do a little bit of let's talk about some trends that we are seeing in the films that came out in 2021. This was the year kind of, COVID plus one, I feel is what 2021 should be looked at when it comes to film. That people were coming out of the COVID quarantines, and that we were starting to see people coming into theaters again, that films were allowed to be coming out that were held onto for the longest time during the COVID quarantines, because film goers felt confident enough to go to the theater, and studios were more than happy to put out some of those films that were held on in order to meet those needs. And we did see a drop in box office, and a lot of films did find their way going into the streaming services. That said, there were a few trends that I thought were very interesting regarding theatrical held films. These are all trends that I was seeing specifically in films that were released in the theater. The first thing we need to talk, since we talked about Marvel, I feel like it should be that we start things off by saying that Marvel is taking real chances, and taking big chances on their particular films, especially when it comes to their theatrical stuff, and for the most part it is paying off. Shang-Chi, I don't think anyone really had any, Shang-Chi didn't have, there was not a whole lot of people that were really excited about this one. I, for one, was kind of thinking that this would be just kind of a throwaway. I really, really liked Shang-Chi as a story, and I honestly feel it's one of the better origin films when it comes to MCU heroes. I'm deeply excited to see what they do with Shang-Chi, both in the Avengers as well as hopefully, I'm most likely he's going to get another standalone film, and I'm really excited to see what they do with that. Eternals, which is the second worst MCU film made so far. Obviously, Iron Man 3 is still the worst in my opinion. But even there, they were being ambitious. They were willing to take chances in order to do something unique. And while that didn't work, I appreciate and applaud the fact that they were willing to go all in, and the fact that that they were willing to take those particular chances. And Spider-Man, again, I know that I've basically spent the last half hour crapping on the film, but honestly, it is a lot of fun. As an entertaining film, it was great. I thought it was a good idea to release it at Christmas time, especially considering that we had so many films being pushed. The fact that they held to it and actually released it, and that it's making the money that it is. I'm very happy about that because I feel like this is going to show that Marvel that Marvel is willing to put it out there, and that they're willing to give films a chance to, and try unique things, which we saw with Shang-Chi, which we saw with Eternals. And so as we get into like Blade and the MCU television series, which I really liked all 4 of the television series that we had this year. But that Marvel is willing to take those chances. And I'm very excited to see what they do, especially in this next year, which we'll talk about when we get into some of the films of 2022 I'm really excited about. Also, a trend that I did notice that was really making me sad in this particular sense, because I am a huge fan of musicals, is the fact that the movie musical is on its way out. We've had 3 high-end movie musicals that came out, and all 3 underperformed. Whether it be Dear Evan Hansen with its atrocious reviews, I for one enjoyed it, but I also understand why people had problems with it. John Chu's In the Heights, which spoiler alert, I'm a huge In the Heights fan. I was really excited about this one, but people didn't go out to see this. And it wasn't because of COVID. It wasn't because of HBO Max. It's just because people are getting tired of movie musicals. Even West Side Story, which is one of the best films of the year, did not have people come out. And that's with all the critics, great word of mouth. This thing just didn't perform. And I do find myself wondering, because this December we were supposed to have Hamilton coming out in theaters. And I'm wondering now, if it had come out in theaters in December 2021, obviously this is COVID notwithstanding, would it have gotten the box office that they were expecting? And I'm honestly thinking no. I don't think that Hamilton would have gotten the box office that they were expecting. It might have even played for as a flop, in my opinion. I think that Hamilton, probably the best move was, in fact, to put Hamilton on Disney Plus. It was able to get more people to come to Disney Plus to see it, and I think that would have been much better than had it played. And maybe not a flop, but definitely would have had a limited audience to come see it. Maybe it would have done well in the first week or 2, but I don't think it would have hit the massive amounts of money they would have needed to make in order to be profitable, considering what they paid in order to get the film rights for it. But who knows? I mean, we do have a whole bunch of musicals coming out in the next year. I know that we have Wicked showing up, although I think that might be 2023. But we'll just have to see, and maybe this is a trend that's going to change, maybe not. But I honestly really don't think it is going to change. I think that movie musicals have had its moment, and that it's going to kind of go cold for a little bit, and maybe in about 10 years or so, maybe more people might want to go see a movie musical. But another thing that I think has hit its prime and is on its way out is nostalgia films. Films that are played specifically in order to appease nostalgia. And and I'm going to say this with respect specifically to science fiction and fantasy stories. Matrix Resurrections really really didn't do well in the box office, and you could say that Spider-Man had a part to play in it, but I honestly think that people just did not care. That especially using these franchises that are 20 to 30 years off, people are not going out to see it. And I think part of it also has to be the fact that Star Wars and the sequel trilogy, as much as I've enjoyed them, that they just did not meet the expectations that audiences have. And I think that nostalgia films are in a situation where they can't win either way, because the fans want to have something that's familiar. Nostalgia triggers when people are getting the same kind of fix that they got the first time. But at the same time, though, if they get that fix, then it comes off as being rote. That it's not it doesn't have a story to tell. It is just going through the motions of something that has been done before. And so I know that we're going to be getting some more nostalgia films in 2022. And I'm curious to see where it goes with that, especially considering that some of those nostalgia films are films that I'm very excited about. But at the same time, I also know that there's a good and a great chance that these films are going to be extremely disappointing. And finally, when it comes to trends of 2021 that I want to talk about, I do want to discuss something that has really got me concerned, because I am a huge proponent of the theatrical experience, especially when it comes to smaller films. But there is a prestige bubble that is taking place. The fact that Oscar caliber films that they are getting theatrical releases is only really happening primarily because of Apple and Amazon and Netflix, and I have a strange feeling Hulu and Peacock are also going to get involved a little bit, trying their hand at getting into the Oscar race. Okay, maybe not Peacock because they're Universal, but that's because these films want to get into the Oscar race, and the Academy requires that films have to have a certain amount of time in the theater, that they're willing to put these particular films out there. Case in point, I just talked about the Tragedy of Macbeth with Apple Films. The film would not have been made if it weren't for Apple's involvement, or gotten it wouldn't have gotten the ability to get made at the level that, or at the quality that it needed to be, unless Apple had gotten involved. And Apple is only doing this because they want Oscar. They want to be that first streaming service that gets that Oscar. And so that is that's going to be something that we're going to be seeing a lot more of, especially when it comes to Amazon. Amazon this year will put in their money onto the Aaron Sorkin film Meet the Ricardos, which, by the way, is a good film, not Oscar, or I shouldn't say that the best picture nominee, no, but I can definitely see specifically Nicole Kidman and Harvey Bardem going up for Oscar nominations, maybe even J.K. Simmons for that as well. But that is the hunt is for Oscars and for Oscar recognition from these particular studios, putting their movies out in theaters, and that having a part to play in some of these prestige films, these lower budget, not really meant to make a whole bunch of money, theatrical films being released. And that, if especially considering that's a bubble, my question that I'm curious about, especially going into 2022, is what happens when when you do start to see Amazon, Apple, and Netflix starting to win those Academy Awards, and maybe even putting pressure on the Academy to stop to allow for streaming to be allowing for Academy for Academy recognition. Will that mean that the theatrical experience is going to go away, or that the theatrical experience is only going to be for the massive money-making mega blockbusters, which have the possibility of failing and, of course, crippling the ability for theaters to run. And that's something that I'm curious to look forward to and kind of to keep an eye on moving forward. But those are just 4 trends that I noticed happening in 2021. And if you have a particular trend that you also saw, please feel free to throw it in the chat and let's get a conversation going. All right, so I'm going to quickly go through some of the films that I'm really excited about for 2022. And at that particular point, we should be good for the day. But I do want to talk about these films because I am really excited. And like I said, most of these films are some of the bigger ones, although there were a couple of smaller films that I just heard about that I am super excited about. And I really cannot wait to see these films in theaters where they belong. So the first film that I'm really excited about coming in April is the new Robert Eggers film. I loved The Lighthouse. I really enjoyed The Witch. I'm really excited to see what he does with The Northman. Vikings. Looks like there's going to be kind of a mix of reality and legend and lore. We got Alexander Skarsgård, just pulling off the whole Conan the Barbarian thing as a Viking. We have Anya Taylor-Joy. We have Bjork. We have Nicole Kidman. This thing is just wild. It looks incredible. I cannot wait to see this film. We also have The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which I'm hoping is going to be the explosion of the Nicolas Cage renaissance that we've all been hoping for at least the last 3 years. Nicolas Cage has been making some incredible movies. This year alone, he did Pig, which, if you haven't seen Pig, see Pig. It is incredible. I love this film. You might want to keep an eye out for my top 10 list. There might be some talk about Pig in there. And him playing Nicolas Cage. We also have Pedro Pascal. It looks insane. This is it feels like a Spike Jonze film, Charlie Kaufman film, except that they have no involvement in this. So I'm really excited to see what they do with this. And it just looks incredibly funny and way out there. When it comes to Marvel, I'm really excited about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, primarily because I do enjoy Doctor Strange. I enjoyed the original, the first Doctor Strange film. The fact that we're kind of still in the realm of the WandaVision universe, which I really am excited to see where they go with that. I have absolutely no idea what they're going to do with this, and I love the fact that I am completely clueless as to what could happen here. And of course, Taika Waititi's Thor: Love and Thunder, which again, I don't want to know anything about this film until it comes out. Taika Waititi can do no wrong at this particular point. I will just trust him to take me on a wild ride. Another film that I'm really excited about over the summer is Jurassic World Dominion. I know that for Forbidden Kingdom is Fallen Kingdom is not one of the best Jurassic Park films, but at the same time, I thought it was really enjoyable despite being really silly. That said, this is the Jurassic World movie I've been waiting for. The idea of the dinosaurs and man finding colliding and it coming to a head. I'm curious to see where they go with this. Hopefully they don't punk out, but at the same time, that is a possibility. But I'm really excited to see where they go with Jurassic World on this, especially considering that we're getting all of the 3 main cast members, Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and Jeff Goldblum, in here. Hopefully more than cameos, but you never know. Then going into the fall, Also coming out in July as well, I do want to talk about Jordan Peele's Nope. I have very little idea as to what this movie is going to be about, although alien invasion is my second favorite science fiction horror concept, and Jordan Peele already did my number one science fiction horror concept, which was in Us. So I'm very excited to see what he does, and especially with the title like Nope. I get the feeling that this is going to be horror, comedy, science fiction, and he's going to be able to marry all three of these things together. In the fall, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. I know that I just crapped all over No Way Home, but I loved Into the Spider-Verse, and I honestly think that this is going to be a great follow-up to it. I'm curious to see what they do, especially with Oscar Isaac joining us as the futuristic Spider-Man. This is going to be a lot of fun. And finally, even though I know a lot of people just do not like this series at all, but Avatar 2. I'm sorry. I love Avatar. I enjoy Avatar. I'm curious to see what James Cameron's got involved. James Cameron, you can count him out, but he tends to do something that really does make things unique. And I don't think that he would make a film, especially as late as he has with Avatar 2, unless he knows he has a good idea here and he really he can really deliver. That said, the chips are against him on this one. It is very possible that he doesn't have something good enough. But at the same time, I don't know. I just maybe it's just my 90s self. Like I don't count out James Cameron. He doesn't disappoint, and I have a lot of confidence in him. Although I might be regretting that come this time next year. All right, so if there's a particular film that you're excited about for 2022, please feel free to knock it out and put it in the chat. If I see it, I'll respond to it if I can. If you have ideas for other episodes, or if you want to contribute a concept, something for discussion, please feel free to also throw it in the chat as well. And who knows, maybe it might be a part of a future episode of Monday Night Movie Talk with the Movie Dude Eric. On our next episode, I will be discussing the best films of 2021. I almost have the list completed. It's 99% way completed. I'm just waiting for one last thing. And then next week, I will be discussing those films with you. And I really hope that you'll stick around and join us for that. Also, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. I know this is what everybody does on the streams nowadays. But thank you so much for giving me a bit of your time. This is the Movie Dude Eric, and this has been Monday Night.